Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to the NLC Week 3, Day 1, where we are bringing you the final game of the day, our match of the day, Verdant facing off against Riddle. Verdant trying to keep up the pressure on the teams at the top of the table. Riddle looking to continue their unbeaten run.
So, it's ironic because they don't actually maintain any pressure on the map at any point until you try to start ending the game. And then it just hits you in an instant. That Baron isn't yours. That Soul Drake isn't yours. Somehow, it has gone over to Taxer. It has gone over to Verdant. And the game starts slipping out of your hands. Verdant's pressure is this persistent threat that the game can turn on a dime, and all of your efforts up to this point are all for naught. And it happens so often, literally every single one of their wins, that you have to genuinely consider every objective setup that you do to its maximum extent. You have to take these fights and you have to win these fights, but Riddle have been good about that. Riddle have been very good about that, and hopefully we see more of that today.
Well, before we get to that, Veteran, we do have a video that is sent in by Verdant that they have asked us to play on the broadcast, so wondering, production, if we're going to be able to run that now?
Welcome to Guess That Champ. The voice line for a champion will be read out to the player along with a clue on the role in which that champion is played. All they have to do is guess the right answer.
How about a magic trick?
Magic trick. I feel like I can hear the voice. Is it Shaco?
Oh, it's Shaco, yeah.
Oh, it's like a yodel champ. I think it's Ludo. I can like hear the voice in my head, but I don't remember the champ. Is it Vega?
Shaco.
I want to say Luck.
Johanny? No. I don't know. I don't really play the game.
Fired up and ready to serve.
Oh, I know that one. And ready to serve. I do know this. Is it Y?
I'm so clueless. Tristana.
That's Blitzcrank.
It's Corky.
Blitzcrank.
Oh, it's Blitzcrank.
As I live, all will die.
Die. I feel like it's some Noxian or something. I don't know why. Renekton.
Renekton?
Sounds like Aatrox or something.
Renekton.
Oh, it's Renekton, no?
I don't know. I know it's the top lane yet, but that's it.
Nothing gets in. No one gets out.
Is that Rel?
Leona or something?
That's Jarvan.
That's a hard one. Trash?
But it must be Red or something that I don't really play that much.
Bro, I play World of Warcraft. Sorry, guys.
Blood runs. They all run.
Blood. Okay, something blood. This is so hard. Warwick?
I guess it's like Vladimir or something.
It's Rengar. I don't know.
Warwick?
I mean, it should be Warwick.
It's Bill Bit, right? No? How can I be so bad at this?
You and me, we got this.
Yumi.
Is that Rakan or something? Saya.
Sounds like Yumi or something. Oh, yeah, I got one.
Yumi.
Is it that Yumi or what?
It's the goddamn cat. I hate her. Have to play this shit. So boring. It's nerfed soon though, so yeah, thank you, Riot.
Embrace the darkness.
Nocturne. Yeah, now okay, on the roll.
That's Nocturne, no?
Nocturne.
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 You have the heart of a weakling.
A heart of a weakling? Ah, that's a rough one. Let's see. Volibear?
You have a heart of a weakling? Is it Heimerdinger?
Bro.
Sejuani?
I have no idea.
I've heard that one before. Is that Sejuani? No, it's not. I don't know, but I heard it before.
Oh, well, that was very entertaining. Thank you very much, Verdant. Of course, any orgs out there that want to get a bit of video content on the NLC stream, please just send it our way and we will play it. Veteran, I'm not going to lie, I was kind of disappointed in Danksman there. like spending the entirety of that thing just going, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not particularly sure. But do you know what? Tom Kick knows his way around voice lines.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, I was especially disappointed that anyone got anything wrong when it came to the Yumi pit, right? Because it literally says, you and me, we got this. And then somehow the disconnect was there. Obviously easier for us when we can see the silhouettes, but come on. I mean, the name is literally there. But yeah, anyone who openly admits to still playing World of Warcraft, I have to just immediately disassociate in my head. So like, I'm out there. I have no expectations.
Right, well, back to the game at hand. The matchup on our screen as we are jumping into Champion Select. It is Riddle versus Verdant. Riddle have looked very, very clean, veteran. Very, very controlled. Verdant have won through magic, and they'll be hoping for some magic this time around.
But Riddle won their last game through Banderas and his pools immediately getting moved. The Camille is still up though, and we've seen him, our last cast of them, Banderas was so impactful on that Camille. Interesting to see if they leave it up given these. Otherwise, it's a very spread set of bans, in which case you haven't really removed any particular strategy or player from the side of Riddle. But these are spread on both sides. Jax is out, Fiora is out, Ashe is out, Cassio's out, Maokai's out, Wukong's out. Jungle's the only one being targeted several times in the Lulu opener for Riddle. Kiba on that champion again. Interesting to see what happens. Cly and Kiba both very characteristically attempt to go for these neutral objective contests a lot. Kiba's not going to have an advantage doing that with the Lulu, maybe in speed, but much less so in utility. It will be about Kiba and Reptile together. It's difficult to find players in Riddle that have had terrible games. Reptile's definitely had very good games so far, and Kiba has had impacts on the Lulu, so not such a big deal that he's on it, but it's interesting in how he matches up with Cly. Varus being locked in now is interesting. They banned the Ashe and insta-took the Varus. That does make a lot of sense. It does make you wonder if Jhin, Caitlyn, anything like these could be the play. You can't do Caitlyn here, but the Zeri is telegraphed by the Lulu. Maybe that's what they're thinking. We just saw Varus range do well to control the Zeri composition in the previous game. So they see the Lulu, they figure you're gonna go Zeri or you go Caitlyn. Varus decent into both of those. Pick that, they've removed the Ashe. Verdant have planned this. Definitely a plan.
Yeah, but I think on the side of Riddle, I think they're happy with the comfort they've got for themselves because Kiba's played a little bit of the Lulu, it's done great, but I think the real key is that Reptile is so good on these scaling hyper carries that you can kind of leave alone in the early game. He'll turn up 20 minutes, have a couple of items, and he'll just completely take over a fight. That's what he did on UOL back in the day. That's what he's been doing on Riddle as well. Banderas, it's not going to be a pure split pusher for him this time around. The Cassante, a champion that can team fight a little bit more and can be a bit more of a frontline too.
That's fine, you're beginning to build a composition around Reptile, but we've seen Reptile do it on Zeri, right? He's been very good. His first split in Prime League, he was absolutely phenomenal. He's proved himself so far in NLC. The Camille has been taken by Verdant. This is something we were thinking about for Banderas, but Nilla, he was the OG split pusher of this league. Brilliant pickup for him. Varus does help with that. You're looking at a 4-1 siege composition here with Camille on the side. That's a good setup. I do like that from Verdant. You don't have many responses from Riddle so far, but now you have to think about things like the Talia, like jungle options. These are the things that could potentially mess up that Nyla split push.
But it has been fairly good for them so far. You see Verdant there targeting out that Vi, a little bit of that single target lockdown that they're not going to have access to on the side of Riddle anymore. Great pick into stuff like the Varus. He doesn't have too much mobility. And I think Riddle here, why is he targeting out that Karma, a champion that can generate a lot of priority in terms of the laning phase or something like a Varus? And if you are able to sort of dominate, get control of a Zeri in the early game, then that late game becomes very, very far away.
Yeah, no, 100%. I like the Kindred removal here, the Karma removal here. We're talking about hyper carries, right? That's the big risk that they're thinking could come in play to this game. Mid lane is the big lane left for that to actually come out. But the Kindred removal, I like it a lot. The Lulu with Zeri is obviously a very strong pick, but the Lulu with the Kindred is extremely strong as well. Jin's support, emphasizing that 4-1 siege composition, Old Rocks Tigers classic. or you just go with the Rakan, right? Still works well within that, just a little bit less creative than the Jhin support. But, you know, if you're talking about Zeri being short range and you're looking at the Cassandra, you want something that can bypass all of that and be the threat. This can continue to chase on towards the Zeri. The Sylas, I mean, you have to blind. Sylas is a very good blind. Does Errol play the Zac, maybe? Those are the kinds of things that we're asking now when you see Sylas being hovered and picked. Otherwise, you could just end up seeing your quintillionth Sylas via Kali matchup, in which case it's now a 1-3-1 composition instead of a 4-1. The Sylas anticipates the mage in mid. And that's most likely what we see. Johan on the Graves, that will be an interesting one. Does go well with the Lulu as well, synergizes well the whole comp and makes this a very Zeri-driven composition. But Johan can control whatever Taxa wants to do, or is it the Lee?
Okay.
Interesting. Okay, I'm not entirely sure what to make of this.
I'm thinking Taxa can't steal a Baron if he's not in the pit. And Dragon's Rage is a very, very good way to kick Taxa out of the pit. So I think, generally, that might be the thought process there, because the way that Verdant have been winning these games is off a lot of these objective steals.
Yes.
Now, the Azir coming in here for E-roll, I think this is to be expected. This guy is a mage player, and that Sylas was picked in the anticipation that we'd be seeing something like the Bird Emperor locked in the mid lane.
Yep, I mean, the Azir is out. Azir plus Varus plus Camille. Very good 4-1 siege composition, but remember what happened with the game you just saw, how fast the Azir and the Varus together can delete these neutral objectives. Verdant have won through neutral objectives. They've been reliant on their opponents actually dealing most of the damage to those objectives before. Maybe this game, Verdant are saying, we actually want to get in on this Drake Baron thingamy-bob you guys keep doing for us. And have picked 2 champs that do it very well. But ultimately, it's the Nyla show here, right? Bot to top is what I'm expecting from this jungle matchup, right? Into a composition later that tries to get defensive vision around their red buff side and allow that Camille to split push, either on top or on bot lane, and just siege in midsection. You can't really wave clear into the Azir Varus. You can't really stay on the tower against the Azir Varus. Very classic composition, classic set of champions that we used to see from the likes of Rox Tigers in 2015 onwards.
And the thing about the Camille as well, the extra little sort of twist on that, is that Hextech Ultimatum is so incredibly effective against the Zeri. That movement speed means absolutely nothing if there is a very clearly defined area that you are not allowed to leave. But looking over on the side of Riddle, I feel like they want to play these fights a bit more skirmishy. There's a lot of big engage options and big teamfight tools here for Verdant, but on the side of Riddle, I feel it's more about finding isolated 3v2s, maybe some 2v1s in those little team fights that you can then get into bigger advantages. We are now jumping onto the red for our final game of the day. Riddle trying to keep their unbeaten streak alive. Verdant looking to potentially leapfrog Ruddy in the standings if they can get an upset win today.
Yeah, but that's an uphill battle for them, just like it was for Ruddy in the previous game. They aren't really favored. I mean, I'm sorry, Middlecourt, except by you, they aren't realistically favored in terms of team versus team matchup. Their draft's decent here, right? Like, they do have playable win conditions, but they are yet to really win one of these games on their own terms. They've won it through God's graces himself, and we know the name of our Lord. It is Taxa, right? The only thing certain other than death is that he will steal your objective and your win. And that is legitimately the question. How do you deal with that potential eventuality? Because otherwise, we might just be looking at a clean lead into a close for Riddle, like they have done so many times before.
And there have been a couple of curveballs in terms of the champion picks here. We've sort of discussed the Camille at length, but I also want to look at this Lee Sin here for Johan. We've seen a Lee Sin in the NLC already, and it didn't go great. Why? What's the thinking behind this pick, aside from kicking Taxa out of the Baron pit?
I mean, it's interesting. I think you want to just match Taxa towards this top side rather than play a farming jungler, which would not really want to skip his camps to match so much. And in having this skirmish power early, you can prevent Nyla being able to get ahead in the opening phases of the game. Right now, he has to think about the potential for a level 2 Lee Sin being topside, which limits his ability to trade against the Cassante. That's the immediate thing I think you get. You also know you have scaling locked down with the Zeri Lulu. You don't need it from the Graves. You don't need it from your top lane. You don't need it from your mid lane. You don't need it from your jungle. If you don't need it there, then why not just get something that guarantees to bridge you into later phases and gives you more stuff in the opening? Good skirmishing allows you to get to your late game phase. You don't need additional insurance. Just trust in Reptile to do what he's done so many times before. That's the thinking behind the Lee Sin. Just disrupt Taxa, disrupt the enemy's game plan, and then trust that your team will carry you in later phases. He has Taxa's number right now. He's in this guy's jungle. He's looking for him. He's hunting him down.
That's exactly what we were saying that he needed to be doing. Can now rotate towards the mid lane. No, he's just going to continue around this top side. Raptors are up if he wants to take those away, but I imagine that this is a sign of things to come, and it wouldn't surprise me if Johan spent a little bit more time in Tax's jungle than he ends up spending in his own.
Yes, I mean, at least trying to match him and make sure he doesn't have easy paths to do something topside. Just by forcing Taxa out of topside jungle, or at least giving his own team the knowledge of Taxa's reset on topside, Camille can't really do whatever it is that she wants to the Cassante right now and leverage her own lead 1v1. So you have a lot of impact even if you don't hunt down Taxa just by giving that information to your team.
I like that from Johan. There's a little bit of an engage from Cly in the bottom lane. Rakan, another one of these picks that we don't tend to see too much, as a lot of these engage and slightly tankier supports have fallen away in favour of the Enchanter and Poke Meta that has emerged in the bottom lane, but it's nice to see Cly is willing to go back to some of the classics.
Yeah, I mean, Cly has always been one of these map-based, pick-based players, right? Think about the Nautilus, think about the Leona, we think about even full-on engaged champs like the Alistar, right? These are the things Cly excels on, and he came from that kind of like Treats Rux era of supports that understood at least the basic things you should be doing from resets and attempted to do those consistently. So a champion like Rakan rather than an Enchanter is the minimum we would expect from a player like him. He hasn't changed that much since the old days, and it is stuff that, especially in the ERLs, does give your team a net benefit.
Well, I suppose because we're not LCK, right? The bottom lane play isn't going to be absolutely immaculate, and so the idea that you can actually trade some of the power in that 2v2, or maybe even empowering your AD carry for that more reliable, that more certain engage in these team fights is very valuable. You look at Nile, you look at Taxa, they've got some single target engage, but there's nothing quite like a grand entrance, charming a whole bunch of people and knocking them into the sky. Fire Rain here, fighting up with E-Roll, using that stolen Azir ultimate to just get a bit of a chunk onto this mage in the mid lane.
Yeah, first Azir ultimate from the game, and it's not even from the Azir. The Azir doesn't even have it yet, just gets it now. Just now hits level 6. Fire Rain really leveraged that minion advantage that he got to get the level 6 first and immediately go all in. Respect it, it makes it very difficult for the Azir to move up and crash this wave, and eventually he will have to move up and crash it.
So, something that I have noticed, just having a little look at the item builds and the keystones picked up, Kevo actually opting towards Hail of Blades and going towards the Serrated Dirk, which will imply this is a bit more of a poke focus Varus as opposed to the on-hit that we saw from Woolite in the previous game.
Yeah, I mean, that does somewhat diminish the Baron threat that he has, but
Nile gets pulled under the tower. That was a really smart dodge on the resonating strike. Means that the Verdant top lane is going to be able to get away. Riddle might opt in for a 2v2, make that a 3v3 as Fire Rain is moving over, and Taxa is taking incredibly low, flashes away just in time. The second Azir ultimate of the game is enough to keep the Verdant jungler alive.
I mean, Nyla can get out there. If that wave has a cannon in it, he may not even lose that much, but it's still going to hurt. He's actually going to risk staying here to absorb the wave, when they see him on the tower, it's interesting if Lee decides to cancel or not. Bot lane in the 2v2, but that's not going to give any kills, and it's just going to be a reset for Reptile and Key, but that's why they did it there. If you go aggressive in that moment, you don't care if you lose the trade 2v2, and you do lose a trade 2v2, because you're going to recall anyway. So Cly responds by interrupting the recalls, locks them in lane. Now they have to deal with their low HP, low mana. Biscuits being burned to make sure they can still play the game. Kevo is inches away from losing mana, but look at his inventory. It's fake. He does have 2 biscuits up, so overall really good state for Verdant's bot lane now because of Cly's interruption of the enemy recalls. They could leverage this into a better back and be in a good position to fight on the next rotation.
I mean, with Tax roaming down and level 5 on bottom lane for quite a while, maybe we are looking at some level 6 timings in a potential dive. There we are. Kevo, access to the chains of corruptions now. Taxus soaking a bit of XP just to get level 6, and now Verdant's bottom lane peeling off with their jungler towards the dragon. Just going to take a reset instead.
Yeah, I mean, he denied Zeri another reset on bot. Cly is ahead a full wave from his AD carry on resetting, which means he could make a play on top lane, and that's what you want. For this Camille to get ahead of the Cassante, shut down the Cassante, get the Camille your big win condition in the game online and enable her to be able to play sides here. They're going to do this into a Herald. You have to assume that Herald will be dropped topside. Varus is very far ahead of the Zeri. This could be a really good scenario for Verdant.
Bahrain's got the stolen Sejuani ultimate, and he's able to lock down Cly with it, and they've stolen the Herald as well! Verdant set up the play, but it goes disastrously wrong. 2 kills for Riddle and the Herald.
Could. The operative word there was could. It did not, in fact, go well. Instead, Johan, his pick on the Lee Sin pays dividends there. This is picked to give them good skirmishing potential, and whereas all it did was like the job that it had to do in this fight, that's more than enough. If he was here on something like Graves, it's nowhere near as impactful. This opening, the Sedge ult coming out from the Silas there, was absolutely huge. Insta-deleted. The Rakan being there did not matter whatsoever. Just wiped out from the game. Ultimately, they just delivered more gold into Riddle's pockets, and now Riddle are firmly in control of this game. A lot of very nice movements from the bot lane in the 2v2 into the map vanish because Riddle just play these fights better when it matters, and that bodes well for the rest of the game because, as we've been saying, they have to play those fights good on the neutrals to risk it not getting stolen, to not risk it getting stolen. So
I tell you what, it vindicates the Lee Sin pick as well, right? Not only has Johan been doing a pretty decent job of tracking where Tax is and shutting him down, if Riddle are forcing these early fights and getting into these skirmishes, the Lee Sin is just going to provide more value than the Sejuani at this point of the game.
Yeah, for sure the Lee can provide more. It's just the Lee will provide so little later on, except for the utility of his kick, which, as you've expressed before, could just be used to give Sejuani so much distance that she can't steal the Baron. I'm envisioning a flash kick ward hop or ward hop flash kick back in towards the Baron pit, stuff like this. But this early control, preventing them getting the Nyla win condition now, not getting the Herald to drop for the Nyla win condition, just guarantees you're in that better position later fights if you trust Reptile. Reptile not getting the free lane he maybe expected bot here. Ooh, Banderas.
Ooh, beautiful dodge away from the knock-up. Lining up with Banderas in the top lane as the second charge a Q and gets a solo kill. That is exactly what the Verdant fans would have been asking for.
That is not what you want to see on your screen right now. If you are a Riddle fan, Verdant have gotten the opening salvo. Middle cot, I can taste his satisfaction from here, but Reptile, you know, he doesn't want that prediction to turn out to be correct. They're going in, they're basically 2v3ing them. Varus, Rakan, Sedge, not really able to do much on the bot side there. So we just get a replay of this.
That dodge, I think Nille just completely turns the entire fight, and Verdant really needed a bit of an outlet because this game, not getting away from them, but Riddle definitely stronger as it stands. Ultimate goes a little bit wide as Johan is going to be forced to get away just in time. Safeguard, Wild Growth, everything popped on the Lee Sin to keep him alive.
Probably overkill and you lose those cooldowns, but Riddle are in a position where they can choose if they want the next fight or not. Bot lane is bouncing back into them, top is bouncing back into them, mid is bouncing back into them, and no neutrals on the map. You can afford to burn everything to make sure that Johan's error there doesn't become a calamity for the rest of your team. Banderas, meanwhile, he's just absolutely chilling, taking plate upon plate upon plate. Nyla's back here, he needs to get away. Nyla now, thinking, can I get this? Doesn't really have the ultimate to lock him into the fight, so he'll just get some chip damage and go. But my god, that chip damage. Nyla could really be a threat here.
That's not a chip. Like, I don't know what's bigger than a chip, a chunk? The Divine Sunderer has...
That was a potato of damage.
I dislike the direction that you've gone with that.
It's a potato of damage.
We are not calling it a potato of damage, veteran.
He did a potato of damage. What's wrong with that?
Right, anyway, long story
you can get
short...
many chips from a potato. That was many chips worth of damage. It's a potato. I'm right.
But you're right, but at what cost, veteran? At what cost? Long story short, Divine Sunderer, very, very good on Camille. And I like this from Verdant, actually. They're hunting for fire, and Cly blowing the trap a little bit too early. And not able to catch out the Silas.
I mean, both Kiba and Firerain, they're moving into the jungle to defend Johan. Taxa a bit fed up of Johan having his number with these lanes, leveraging the advantages lanes have to try to make something happen there. But now Nyla might be caught out.
He's going to be able to hookshot wall dive away, but Johan with the ward up over the wall into the queue will be able to find him, lock him out, kick him back. There should be an elementary kill. Actually, a very smart flashback from Nilla, and there are no more members of Riddle who are chasing him down. Turns it around onto Johan, who cannot get away. A solo kill from Nilla.
I mean, another potato worth of damage there from Nyla to secure the kill. Firerain, though, he's going to try to cook this potato here, make it nice and crispy, but he's going to get executed by the tower. No one is going to be fed today.
That is big. Do you know what's worse than a one kill, Camille, veteran?
A rotten potato.
2 kills on the Camille. This was very, very well played from Nilla, respecting, understanding the limits of his damage and getting the turnaround beautifully.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is the danger zone. You pick the Lee Sin because you knew he's not going to be that good later, but maybe you get skirmishes early. The Lee can't even take it to the Camille.
Reptile cleanses instantly, but he's going to get charmed. No, Cly misses him, actually. Reptile is 2v3ing in the bot lane. Weak side king.
I mean, Verdant, this is a very strong showing from them. Yes, they're 3k gold behind, but they are getting their gold on their win conditions. Meanwhile, the kills on Riddle are on the Cassante. They're on the Lulu. They're not on the Silas. They're not on the Zeri, and the Zeri is what you're relying on later on. And the accelerating pick from Verdant, this Nyla Camille, it's on the board. It is the sum accumulation of their goal difference from if they'd done nothing. They actually are in a good position, just can they get this Herald? They failed the last time. They don't have the Scuttler this time. They have priority from the Camille. They don't have the Varus coming in, but the Varus was inconsequential before. If they can grab this Herald and do something with it, right? Maybe they can open up the game in their favor in a state where the Camille is a threat on the side. No one can take her. Where Camille can lean in towards the jungle and do something. Lee is starting it up, but you know, Verdant, they can sniff when you start an objective. Like, I was in Diamond Promos yesterday, and Taxa was just came in from Grandmaster and just insta-stole the whole thing, right? Like, they know, and they're looking to contest.
Not going to be able to get there in time, and I think that this Rift Herald is really key for Riddle, because whilst members of Verdant may be in good spots, the map fundamentally isn't. They've lost 2 towers. They haven't been able to get anything off of these heralds. They've gone in favor of Riddle. And now Kevo is being caught out on the side lane by Fire Rain. He's got so much mobility on the Silas, but not quite enough to take out the Verdant AD carry. Drake is on the board. Riddle are moving towards it. And this is what we were talking about, Verdant. They've got good pieces, but if they can't get them all to work together, then the overall gold lead that Riddle have probably going to be enough.
I mean, Riddle's record against Verdant when it comes to neutrals is already leagues above the rest. But, you know, their kills record against Verdant are doing a bit better on that than they have done against anyone else so far. It's looking good for them to try to show that they are a real top-tier team, especially with Ruddy falling so far behind both Nord and Riddle. Maybe Verdant could at least make this try to look close, if not potentially win, because an even Verdant that's able to steal your Baron 22 minutes into the game, I mean, you have to think, then you're starting to sweat as Riddle.
Oh, absolutely, and of course if Nile gets a Baron, then very, very horrible things will happen to the towers and subsequently the base of Riddle, because I don't look at anyone of their champions and think this is someone that can contest a Camille once we get 30 minutes in. What an ultimate predict! Beautiful knockup from the Wild Growth, denies the engage from Kiba, and Riddle are going to be able to turn it around. I don't think they're going to be grabbing any kills as Fire Rain misses with the abscond abduct, but that was a great play from Taxa and an excellent response from Kiba.
When divers go to hell, they find Lulu waiting for them with the polymorph, with the wild growth. It's almost impossible to get on top of someone if you haven't actually accounted for her. My god, she's so goddamn cute and she said stuff like that. But you cannot get the Rakan in if the wild growth is there. You cannot execute the rest of your dive if the polymorph is there. And Kiba is always in position around his AD carry to get that stuff off. He's never in position to die before the fight. If he remains this consistent, Reptile will eventually have the items he needs to carry the game, whether the acceleration has worked or not.
And I think this is great positioning from Johan, right? Because even if Fire Rain is able to get out of the potential dive that Verdant was setting up there, tower still probably goes down. It's 19 minutes into the game, and Riddle haven't lost a structure yet. The longer that they can keep these alive, the harder it is for Nile on the Camille to split push, to actually get advantages for Verdant, and Riddle can keep playing their game, stacking up these objectives, and looking for the next fight.
I mean, you're talking about objective stacking. I mean, I think Taxa's about to knock on your door right there. That's what we're all waiting for, right? Riddle, they look in control of the game. They look like it's in their favor, even if they're only edging that way. It looks like Verdant haven't been able to leverage the Camille into a lead in any real sense. None of the towers are down. If there are long lanes, they're long lanes Riddle can ignore in favor of neutrals. Which means...
Absolutely.
Can they turn it around at those neutrals? Right? The eternal question, which so far for Verdant has been a resounding yes.
You have to feel that it's going to be harder and harder as the map state starts to look worse and worse. Nile will be able to pick up that bot lane tower, and that should be enough gold to get him to his second item, that Ravenous Hydra. It's going to be very, very difficult to deal with, but Riddle, it feels like they're already exactly where they want to be. Johan and Fire Rain hunting for Kevin. They are going to be able to lock him down and find him and take him out with ease. It's a third kill of the game for Riddle. Just a single pick
20.
as it stands. Looking for a push onto the mid lane tower.
It's 20-30. They have a pick. There's potentially a Baron there, but Taxa is still on the map, and they're not. They are peeling off, and they are headed in that direction, and that's the comfort zone right there for Verdant. Nyla going straight back bot, looking to try to pressure them maybe so that they don't start the Baron. He's not going to group with his team just yet. Drake will be up soon. That will be the next point of contest. And as you can see here, they just go straight onto Kevo, completely isolated. Clyde tries to join. Errol is nowhere near able to join. And Taxa, I mean, he can't really do anything there when they decide to do dives like this. There are too many dashes on the side of Riddle, too many ways for them to clear distances that aren't available to anyone but Clyde. It's difficult. You can't get caught out like that, especially not against a team that has so many go buttons.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those go buttons are going to be key for Riddle, because the way that you deal with Nilla at this point is not by trying to fight the Camille, because she probably wins you 1v1. It's engage on the group of people that she's left behind that are trying to defend mid lane, get a pick, and then you could start looking towards objectives like the Baron when Verdant are a little bit more spread out across the map. Next objective spawning, though, is going to be an Ocean Drake. Verdant have actually gained mid-priority for themselves and could think about moving down, but Banderas there in the river, standing strong, preventing them from making the move.
I mean, Verdant, they're still here. They're still able to contest. Riddle, they could peel back and do the Drake, but they know the risks in doing so. Varus has a lot of poke here. Camille could try to get the flank off. Fire Rain here just matching Nyla the whole time, trying to make sure Nyla doesn't get on top. But they are starting the Drake. Potential soul point. Taxa is moving in.
Yeah, but he's been thrown against the wall by Banderas. Dragon is on around about 5,000 HP. There goes the lightning crash from Reptiles. He's trying to kite back and deal a load of damage. Taxa being forced away. As Nella with a big chunk there onto Fire Rain. Banderas low as well. Taxa around about 30 HP as Riddle are continuing onto that Drake. They've got the pick onto Taxa. They've locked him down with the Chains of Corruption. We'll take him out as well. That's soul point now for Riddle. They pop the Shiralius as Clyde's looking for a little bit of disengage there. Johan with a fantastic flash kick, but there's no follow-up. There's no response because Nille has caused issues for the backline. He's going to be able to get away just about on the Camille, but it's killed going in favor of Riddle. That's one traded back though as Clyde's going to be taken down, as does the Nille. Camille go into the grave. It's Riddle with a 3-for-1 and the Drake.
I mean, Riddle have a 3-for-1, they have a 5k gold lead, but you have to think that fight went oddly well for Verdant at the end there. Errol full HP, so many 100 HP targets. You have to think that fight goes slightly differently. And honestly, Riddle could easily lose that. Errol's zoned very heavily here by Johan's kick, but honestly, if Johan's out there doing that kick, who's protecting the Zeri? Only the Lulu, and it wasn't enough. Camille gets straight on top, actually deals a lot there. Either Johan steps back and there's nothing that can be done to Riddle's composition, or that whole fight plays again. Azir plays just a little bit better, and that could have turned around massively for Riddle. But still, that was a Riddle win. It wasn't really a close result, and Riddle have a lot less to correct there than Verdant do. This definitely feels like a Riddle-favoured game from here on out. They even figured out how to deal with Taxa. Apparently, if the guy is dead, he can't actually do anything to your objective.
The smite button does appear to become inoperational when you are dead, so that seems like an effective strategy. I think Riddle recognized that the best way to kill Verdant, the best way to take him down, is to force Nille to group with him so that he can't be the split push threat. And when you can hold the threat of an Ocean Soul, when you can hold the threat of a Baron over your opponent, it's very difficult for Nille to justify spending time in side lanes because his team is going to lose so much more while he's not there.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, but equally, if he doesn't push out these side lanes, he can't get the flanks, and if he doesn't get the flanks, then it's very difficult for him to play. Lee Sin or the Cassante have to match him in all of these fights, and he wants to make sure that that happens far away from his own team, because that would expose Reptile to the rest of his team. So getting these flanks matters. It's stuck between a rock and a hard place with these choices. He's got the pressure bot, immediately leans in, tries to find the flank, but Riddle, they're happy to just let Kevo push in midsection and avoid the potential flank.
Unfortunately for Verdant, though, they still haven't been able to take down that mid lane tower, which stands as a bastion protecting the rest of Riddle's jungle. Baron has been on the map for around about 5 minutes, and we're starting to get towards itemization breakpoints where that becomes a very, very real option for Riddle. Reptile has already got his Infinity Edge, with those changes now activating at 40% crit instead of the 60% means you get a bit of an earlier spike on something like the Zeri.
Yes, you do, but right now the big question is, this Nyla, he's going to be able to move from this bot lane into this red side jungle and into midsection. If Kevo shoves this in, are we actually looking at a Baron that Verdant themselves could start? Silas potentially looking for the flank as well. That's the big disruption. They're gonna take out the mid tower. second tower.
Yeah, but
of
they
the
may
game
pay for it
for
with their
Verdant.
lives as Fire Rain with the stolen Chains of Corruption takes out Cly. And now it's Riddle who are starting to make the moves towards the Purple Worm. Nile is rotating through their jungle, but this is going to be started immediately. Riddle not hanging around one bit. There is poke potential on the side of Verdant. This is a poke Varus. This is an Azir. Being in the pit can be quite hazardous to your health. So Riddle looking to turn, but Fire Rain not quite finding the engage that he absolutely wanted to. Johan jumping out of the pit as well, and Riddle will back away from the Baron. Verdant, they lose one, but they don't lose any more.
Now, Nyla wasn't able to join in on that fight. The poke Varus and the threat of the Azir plus the Baron was apparently enough to force Riddle out. Verdant can be happy with that. It's a result to get the mid tower. It's a result to deny them the Baron. That's more than they could hope for at this point. Let's see what happens if they rotate it again. Fire Rain was the big player there, right? Nyla was looking to try to get his flank off from bot in towards mid, but Fire Rain knew that he could be ahead of him on rotation and was able to make the pick on towards mid lane off of that mid tower pressure from Verdant. If Fire Rain can keep doing that and keep being ahead of Nyla, then Verdant's composition completely falls apart. But again, Verdant can be happy with what they got from that situation. It was a disadvantageous one for them, but they were able to make it work.
Now they are going to be forced to start up the Drake. If Riddle get this, it would be Soul. Johan going over the wall, but you cannot steal from Taxa. It's going to be the Drake going in favor of Verdant, and they're looking for the fight afterwards as well. Cly getting a multi-person charm as Nile is not going to be able to take anyone down. The stolen Ricardo from Fire Rain is absolutely massive in the backline. Vanderas is going all out as Reptile is firing as many shots as he possibly can. Flashes back away from the engage from Cly as the Ricardo isn't able to take him out. Johan goes over the wall and gets two with the Gore Drinker. Blood falling from the bodies on Verdant as it is a triple kill for the Lee Sin. Hero will die as well. And Verdant, was the Drake worth it?
Even though Fire Rain died there, it was insanely impactful for him to go in, flash like that, and Zhonya's in the middle of all four of them. That was an immense amount that he ended up doing in that fight, followed up on beautifully by the rest of the team. That looked so good for Verdant for a bit. It looked so good again, but it just was not enough. That feels to me like the story of the entire day. This is just post Fire Rain death here. Cly re-engages, but that is not the re-engage you want. He has no way to look up Reptile. He's still next to the Lulu, and that just makes them slim picking. Spread out so thin, the Lee could easily go one into the next. Banderas chasing as well, and obviously the Zeri hot on their heels the whole time. This Lulu is actually doing so much for Riddle in this game because Verdant seem to keep forgetting that it's there and that you can't just easily get singular re-engages and singular picks. These have to be committed efforts that the Lulu can't counter, but they just aren't. And that ends up being the story of that Drake. Verdant set very far behind. You have to be thinking Riddle are just thinking about how they close this game rather than play in any kind of defensive manner.
Yeah, and you saw towards the sort of the end of that team fight that it was a load of isolated skirmishes. It wasn't all of Verdant's cooldowns being blown in one direction at the same time on the same people. Riddle were able to dart around a little bit. They were able to manipulate the team fight in such a way that no one was getting locked down and they could have these little fights, and it's propelled them to over a 10,000 gold lead. Fire Rain is going to be locked up, going to be charmed, going to be not taken down actually, as he's going to respond with the stolen Glacial Tomb. Taxa forced about to consult away. Johan looking for a kick onto reroll, but it's not the best that he's ever done in his life. Still, the damage that could come out from Reptile is absolutely ridiculous at this point, and Verdant, they all stay alive, but they are forced away from this tower. It's going to fall in favor of Riddle.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just Reptile, it's Reptile and Kiba. Kiba keeping him alive, constantly dissuading Cly from getting the pick, from Errol from getting the pick, Nile from getting the dive. It's very difficult for them to find a way to penetrate this Riddle composition. Riddle have solved the puzzle of Verdant, and have decided the best way to do that is to take fights, is to not just let them get a kind of setup around these neutrals where they can do an elongated contest. Just fight, 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 And in that kind of a chaos, Verdant don't get room to breathe. They don't get into their comfort zone. They don't get to steal, because that Baron, that Drake, that all comes after their deaths.
And for Riddle, it's felt very similar to a lot of their games, right? Taking fights when they know that they can win. Only going for plays when they know that they have the advantage around them. It's 30 minutes and they've taken that inhib tower, but they haven't properly broken the base here on the side of Verdant. And instead of committing to that lane where they've got the easy inhib to take, they're like, no, we're gonna do our due diligence. We go down to this bot lane, take down the inner tower, and get a proper shove going. Nile does have level 16 if he wants to back and join this fight, as he has claimed that objective bounty. The Camille is getting stronger and stronger, but the question becomes, is it going to be enough?
I mean, right now, there's basically no way Nilla can get anything bot side. It's a question if they can really defend these towers with him there. So he gets what he can.
It doesn't look likely, as Cly is already dead. Inhib is going to be focused down as well. Reptile is a little bit isolated in the front line, but it's not isolation when you're absolutely killing everybody. It's finally going to be taking this back, but the Nexus towers are already being focused down. There's not too much of a minion wave there for Riddle to play with, so they'd have to wait for the next one if they want to engage in a push, and I think the safer option, back away.
Neither didn't even get the tower on top side, so they couldn't even trade 600 gold onto him for that bottom inhibitor. But this is going to give Riddle a pick.
Was a bit aggressive there. Wild Growth used very, very early into the team fight, and you could see the Lee Sin struggling a little bit more to find access in these tight corridors 30+ minutes into the game, as Nala going over the wall, catching onto Fire Rain with a hookshot wall dive. The rest of Riddle there to back up their mid laner though, as Taxa is taken low. The Drake on the board is sole for Riddle. We've already seen Verdant contest this and take this away. If they contest this, take this away and lose the fight, it will just be game. Johan is able to get a massive kick coming through onto Kevo, and the Varus has been eliminated from the fight before he could do anything. All out goes Banderas as the shuffle back is worth absolutely nothing from E-Roll. Nile is get taken down. That's a double kill for Banderas as Taxa is forced to run for the hills. I don't think you're going to be stealing any objectives today, mates, as Johan and Banderas will chase him all the way back to his fountain. Teleports into the base. Riddle, in a dominant victory, will take down Verdant and secure themselves 5-0 at the top of the table.
I mean, even just looking at the scores, you have to think this support was actually incredibly impactful for them. But at the end there, that final fight, the Azir was already down. Johan introduces his new friend Kevo to the rest of the Riddle family, and the carries are dead. There is no more damage. There is no more hope. It's just an easy set of pickings for Riddle to end the game with there. It was difficult to think of who MVP is. The Lee Sin pick did come in clutch a couple of times, but I felt like Fire Rain was the most impactful when it came to these fights. But thinking outside of that, it felt like every time Verdant wanted to do something, right, the Lulu just denied it. Specifically, Cly straight up was not having a good time that game, trying to get any kind of a pick whatsoever going against Kiba on this Lulu here. So it's a very difficult game right now for me to consider who the MVP would be. But it's good to see that they can do as many things as they are. The consistent thing about Riddle is that these skirmishes and these team fights go so well for them, and that's where their real strength lies. They leverage that heavily against Verdant and generated the second stomp that we've seen today.
Pretty strong stuff from them. Do you know what? I think Keeper played pretty well. I'm happy to give the MVP to him. Some of those wild growth times especially were absolutely fantastic when members of Riddle were maybe going a little bit too far forward. He was always there to bail them out and ensure that they were going to be in a good spot. And now, for me, this sets up a very, very interesting paradigm towards the top of the table, because we've got our top two. We've got our 5-0 teams. We've got Riddle, who you just saw in that game, and Nord, who we saw a little bit earlier. Then below them, it's Ruddy and Verdant. So we've ended up with this sort of tiered system within the NLC. I'm intrigued to see how that develops over the next few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, you have Ruddy, you kind of have Verdant nipping at the ankles of that top two, right? They want that second chance. They'll get that second chance, whether or not they're able to prove that they deserve to be a potential contender for the 2 EU Masters spots that the NLC have with it. That's up to them. That's up to their development in the next few weeks. But even at the bottom end, it feels to me like our bottom 2 teams can catch up with the next 2 there as well. There's a lot of mobility possible in the NLC, even as you start to see these clear divides.
So, focusing in a bit more on what we saw from that game, obviously, there was some good stuff for Verdant. I feel like that early game, it was still pretty competitive. Whilst Riddle were building themselves a decent-sized gold lead, Nile always felt like he was a threat until Riddle just completely shut down the game.
Yeah, I mean, he understands his damages on champs like Camille, at least more so than his opponents, and that's exactly what you want, right? So that's clearly the win con Verdant want to play around, but you also see their weaknesses, right? Sure, Taxa is able to get a lot of these steals off, but when it actually comes to controlling the early game map state, I mean, Nyla got a lot of these things because Johan just overestimated his damage, right? Going in towards him, overestimated the impact he could have in these skirmishes, and they turned out to be the case. Or Banderas overestimated the impact that he could have in that 1v1 really early on, right? Like, it feels to me a lot like, whereas Nyla's getting these, he's kind of doing a lot of it himself. He's punishing his opponents, perhaps a lack of knowledge of his champion and stuff. So right now, I can't say that the advantages Verdant were getting early were because the team as a whole understands how to play League of Legends, understands how to control this map, understands their own win cons, because it isn't like they played hard around Nyla and it was working out. Nyla kind of works out in spite of the rest of the situation.
I guess the next step from that is, okay, what about if we try and play towards Nyla? Because if this Camille had twice as many kills coming out of the early game, then I think there's a chance that this game does end up looking very, very different. But I do agree with you, and I think the really the real key thing for me was the amount of times that Taxa would come into bottom lane and Reptile and Kiba just went, no, you're absolutely not getting anything here. We would start turning around the play on the 3 members of Verdant that were trying to come towards him. And I feel like once that had started to happen a couple times, you were going, okay, Verdant, they've got this solo top laner making a lot of plays himself, but the rest of the map, they're not quite able to make it happen.
I mean, obviously what we want to do is see them play towards Nyla, but the name of the game today, in almost every game we've seen, has been identity, right? It's about the team that had a clear identity is the team that wins, right? Especially when we looked at the first 2 games. Even though they were heavily countered in draft, they won because they understood themselves better than their opponents do. If Nyla's such a core part, then let's just pivot the entire game around that, around bot to top roams, around bot to top plays, around Nyla split pushing. Let's just hard focus on these specific kinds of compositions until you get them running. They can't ban every split push in the game, guys. That's just not humanly possible to do. There are too many. Nyla will have something you can do, and it's possible if you just focus your identity like this to start netting these wins on your own terms and not just off the bat of Def, Taxes, and Baron.
Right, well, we are going to be having an interview now with Kevo, I believe, from Verdant. Hey, Kevo, how are you doing, man? Obviously, rough game today, weren't able to take it over the line.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm feeling like not too great, I guess, but there were like some good things about the game and there were some bad things. So yeah, just have to review the game and focus on tomorrow's game.
Well, that's cool. Well, let's have a look at a couple of those good things for yourself. Obviously, Nile, for you guys, was having a pretty good time in the top lane, was able to make a couple of plays himself, but you guys weren't quite able to translate that lead into anything more on the map. Do you feel like there was any particular moment this game where you're like, yeah, if we just executed a little bit stronger there, then we could be looking at a different result?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, first of all, the Herald, like, I have first move from bot as well. Like, we can just play the Herald slower, and we didn't have smite for like 10 or 15 seconds. So if we just wait for my move, I think we can secure Herald and win the fight. And the early game looks a lot better, and then we can just snowball off of that.
I think that's fair enough, and I kind of also want to get your opinion on Riddle as the team, because what we saw on the broadcast was some fairly clean play from them. Did it feel like they were giving you many opportunities as they were moving around the map, or was it quite difficult for you to find those angles?
Yeah, I mean, I think Riddle is for sure a really strong team. I'm looking forward to playing them again, but I mean, there were some things, I guess. I mean, they played like with their spies really well and around objectives and found like good flanks with the Lee Sin and Silas, but I felt like they still gave some windows. I think they're like really good team, but I think if we're playing a bit better, like we can contest them a lot more.
When it came to the Herald lean towards top side that you were talking about earlier, that advantage came off of good 2v2 play from you and from Clyde. Do you view yourselves as like a really strong 2v2 lane in general, and it's just a case of like leveraging that more? If so, do you think you can compete with like the upper end of the bot lanes? We've seen you were actually able to compete in the early game against Reptile and Kiba just now. When it comes to like Woolite, Sing, then Boxlane Nash, do you think you're competitive up there?
Yeah, I think we can like match up to any bot lanes. I wouldn't say like at the moment we're necessarily better than them, but I think we can for sure like hold our own.
That's cool. And so I guess looking at sort of the teams around you, obviously you're finding yourselves at 3-2 now, tied on the scoreline with Roddy. What have your thoughts been on them, and do you think that that's a matchup that you'd be sort of happy to play out?
I feel like the matchup tomorrow against Roddy, it's gonna be a bit easier than Riddle. I mean, it's hard to say, like we haven't played against them, but I feel like we're gonna have a better showing than today, for sure.
Okay, are we going to be having a winner's interview with you tomorrow then?
I mean, it's gonna be someone else, but yeah, you're gonna have a winner from our team.
Hey, do you know what? I believe it. You guys had a very good performance today. Obviously, not able to get the win in the end, but I think still strong stuff from you guys. And I think looking forward, I think a lot of positives that we can take for Verdant.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much for joining us, man. And obviously, have a good evening. I hope to speak to you again soon, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. See ya.
Right, do you know what? I think fair. I think the 2v2 that Kevo was playing out, very, very strong. But we are going to have an opposite member in that lane coming through for the winner's interview. It is Kiba, our MVP on the day, the support from Team Riddle. How are you feeling, man?
Feeling okay. It was a bit of a boring game, to be honest, but we won, so it's pretty nice.
So so is that boring because you were playing Lulu, or boring because there were like 4 kills at 15 minutes?
I think both. I think when you play Lulu, the games are usually really slow. So, like last split, I was playing a lot of Pyke and stuff, but it's not really Pyke season, so it's a bit rough for me. Seeing all these Ashe, Jhin, all this bullshit in bot lane, it's really annoying. But I just have to tank it.
Yeah, I can't imagine that's particularly enjoyable. But we did see some sort of strong skirmishing from you guys, and something that I noticed a lot during that game is that your defensive play on the Lulu was very, very strong. There was a moment in mid lane where it looked like Reptile had been caught out by a Glacial Prison. You get this sick timing on the Wild Growth, where you knock up the Sejuani before you get in. How are you feeling when a play like that comes off on Lulu?
It felt pretty good. I mean, I hope I get MVP because Johan has been stealing all of them. Like, we need some love, especially like I'm not trying to pick myself up, but like also the other games, you know, there's a reason my Wukong is dropping bombs like this, you know. He has a Yuumi on him, but no one appreciates the Yuumi.
Well, keep it. Good news. You are actually the MVP for today, so you don't need to worry about begging. I guess this is time for your acceptance speech of the MVP.
Thank you, everyone.
anyone you want to shout out as thank you? Say thank you to?
I want to shout out Reptile for getting caught. He made me look like a beast. I want to shout out. Also, Veteran, I heard you talked about the Herald play. This is our Herald, not theirs. I told Reptile to drop that extra wave bot, but he didn't drop it and stayed for 1 extra wave, and that's why Kevo couldn't move. So this is it's actually our Herald. It's actually our Herald, and they won't have a cross map. because they only have one wave to play with. So you're wrong in that, and we bot gapped them this game.
So the camera was not showing on bot there, and it just looked to me like Varus interrupted Reptile on there on the bot lane. But you're saying that he just decided not to give up the wave on bot, or?
Yeah, I said drop the normal wave, because then they will only have one non-cannon wave to play with, and then they can't cross map. So if they commit to a cross map on that, they get one plate, we lose one wave, and we can all retake together. So you should just open through mid, and then we retake together,
So you
right?
guys just okay, so you guys just opted into that. That's not going to happen again then, I'm assuming. Next time you'll just like leash him towards top. Okay, cool.
I mean, that error was sketchy from both sides, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I'm just saying, if the Rakan didn't get one-tapped, it would have been a bit different. And also, I haven't rewatched the game, of course, so I can't see what Cable did. But in my head, I'm scared, because in the game, I'm like, wait, he fucked up, and Cable could like be right behind him right now with an ult.
Yes.
And I was, and I'm already there, so then it's like, it's a typical player thing. It feels bad to go away, so just flip it. You just walk in and try anyways, and just hope that
the actual hell that happened was technically in their favor, because their timings were really good there. But if they didn't actually interrupt you in the 2v2 there, then that's actually just, you guys could easily have just aced the whole goddamn game then. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one for the review books. I hope Reptile is watching, because he's getting some DMs after this.
Exposed on the interview by his own support.
How actually is hold on. We're talking a fair bit of smack about his AD carry whilst he's not here to respond. How has it been working with Reptile over the start of this split?
I mean, it's just jokes, I can talk like this about him because I know he's really good. You'll probably call me a griefer as well. I mean, scrims is not looking too good. Well, we have averaged some crazy death averages in scrims recently, but it's all good, But once official game starts, well, just voice crack. But once official game starts, we just kind of.
I wasn't going to point it out, mate.
No, I had to. Someone in chat is going to do it. I'm not going to let that happen.
That's weird actually, because we were speaking with Nico, and he was saying that the Nord scrims weren't going particularly well either. So I'm assuming from this that the key to being a good League of Legends team is not winning any of your scrims. Then.
I'm telling you. It's the hack.
I mean, let's see at you Masters. I mean, it can go both ways, Either we get like one miracle run, or it's looking rough, maybe. But who knows? Let's see. I'm excited.
Do you know what? I'm seeing it. Riddle, EMEA Masters Champion Spring 2023.
No. Don't say stuff like that. I want as little expectations as possible. When I saw like the pre-split tier list and all these things, and I got put under Clyde and all these people, I'm like, that's fine. No one expects to do anything. Like, I just pressed Lulu ult on timed it on Rakan W, and I got MVP. Like, that's how little expectations there is of me, so let's keep it this way.
Okay, well, in that case, Keeper, I look forward to seeing you in relegations at the end of the year. Thank you very much for taking the time to come and chat with us. Go and enjoy that win.
Yeah, shout out to Jord.
Oh, not Jord again.
Shout out
people keep shouting out Jord.
Yeah, Jord's the man. Jord's the man.
Oh, Jord is the man.
Reptile just sucks. That's what I learned.
He's actually completely washed. Very, very bad player. No, I'll tell you what, though. I'll tell you what. Whilst I may not have won the prediction on this game, Veteran, I have been thoroughly impressed by Riddle over these first few weeks. And I really wouldn't be surprised if they are one of those teams who are going to EMEA Masters, as much as maybe the players wouldn't like me to say that. Veteran, before we close out today, I just want to get your final thoughts on how the games have been.
I mean, identity was the clear name of the game today, right? Teams that had a clear cohesive identity won the game, and teams that did not have a clear cohesive identity lost the game. Whether the draft was technically in your favor or not, if everyone's playing out properly, did not matter so much as have you practiced this one kick 10,000 times versus can you do these 10,000 kicks one time, right? The phrase everybody has heard, right? That was out in force today. That's the lesson I hope the losers today consider when they go back to the drawing board. You have games tomorrow, and then you have a week after that until the next set of the round robin, and you can prove again that you can beat these teams that you're losing to the first time around, that you do deserve to be here, that you potentially deserve to go even further.
It's all about focusing in on what you're good at and making it Even better. Veteran, thank you so much for joining me today. I've been Middlecom. And before we say goodbye, just a quick reminder that you can head over to Twitter now to vote for our day MVP. The @ is @NLCLOL. So make sure you go over and vote in that poll. Vote for your favourite player. My vote's going to Kiba just because he was really nice in the interview. But that is going to be it for us. Thank you very much to everyone for watching. This has been the NLC. We will see you tomorrow.